In my quest to build out a studio, I realize I need some decent lighting. I especially need a decent key light. I'm looking a little jaundiced, but maybe it's because I'm next to these boxes. Not a sponsor. Let's go. That's a little hot. Why don't we bring that down? 100% might be a little too much. 35%? Yeah, 35. Maybe around 30. What's up, tubulars? Welcome back to the channel. And if you are new here, this is a place where I help entrepreneurs with their creative endeavors. When we talk about the tech, we talk about your businesses, client relationships, finances, all of those things that help you do the things that matter. So I appreciate you being here. And especially if you're new, hanging out with me, just, you know what to do. Come on. Get into this community, it is lit. Speaking of lit, we're talking about lights. And I want to talk about the Godox SL-60W, and I also want to talk about the Aputure Light Dome, second iteration of that one. But for those that are here for the SL-60W, because I'm going to be talking about some of the flickering issues. And so if you're here, I'm going to be talking about all that stuff first, and then the second portion of the video is going to be about the Aputure Light Dome. I also want to let you know that I probably have not color corrected this. I wanted this straight out of camera, no picture profile. I am shooting on a Sony a6400 on a Sigma 16mm. Aperture is at 2.2 at this point, no ND filter. And yeah, like I said, I want this straight out of camera so you can see, oh, and I'm shooting at 24 frames, but I'm also shooting at 4K. I also have done a lot of research thus far, but I want to do more. All of these files over here on my computer are all of the flicker testing that I've done at the various frame rates and lighting. So I will get into that, but let's actually just talk about the lamp first. And what we have is the Godox SL-60W. It is a daylight 5600 Kelvin COB. That is a chip on board LED lamp. And I am actually using this as a key light right now with the Aputure Light Dome. And it's like I can almost touch it. So it's about that far, roughly at about 45-degree angle here, just kind of shining that because I really did need a key light and especially something with diffuse light in the studio. So I'm going to be talking about my use case and where I think that your use case may fit in here based on the flickering issues and why you may want to look elsewhere if that is something that is concerning to you. But at roughly $130 to $149, this is a great budget LED lamp, and I have to say, I'm not going to go into the whole 120D killer. I'm all about investing in tech that is going to carry you for a while, but also trying to save money where you can. This is something that helps me get that key light and the studio lighting that I need at a great price point. But you know, here's the question that you might ask, but you have to just wait till the second part of the video, is why pair a Godox SL-60W, a budget LED lamp, with something that seems to be a little bit of a higher end diffuser? I guess you'll just have to hang out for that. One of the things that I also have to let you know is that I did not replace the fan in this. So the flicker testing is also going to be based on the fact that it has the original fan in it, because I know that there are some filmmakers out there, some YouTubers that have done some research, and there's some videos out there with the flicker testing or the flicker being actually worse with those upgraded fans. So I won't really talk about that. I can link some resources up or like another channel, but this is on that manufacturer's fan. The fan noise really is like, I've got a microphone that's just out of frame. I've got my Rode Video Micro just out of frame here. And then, you know, I mean, I could just hush for a second, but well, really, I've actually got the AC in the background, so forget it. I mean, I've got the HVAC going, and I'm only at around 30% anyway. I can crank that up, but ultimately, like, for my use case, if I'm doing interviews and if I need, you know, to be like on a sound dampened set, I'm going to be doing different sound design anyway. I'm going to mic people up differently. And of course, one of the things that I wanted to mention is that it is really nice to have the remote, but one thing to keep in mind, because the SL60 does have that LCD on the back, so you know what the percentages are, you know actually how hot it is running, and obviously when you crank it up, the temperature is going to go up, the fan noise is going to go up. But If let's say that I have the light on at 100%, but my remote is at 30%, once I start manipulating this remote, it'll actually default to what's on the remote. So I could go from 100% all the way down. And if I just did, just plus or minus, then it'll completely just drop to what is on the remote. That's just one of those weird things. I think it's like Godox has like a universal remote. So I don't think it's specific to the SL60. I just think it's a remote that they use for many of their lamps. So just as a FYI. So getting into the flicker testing, what I want to talk about today is first the reflector. So setting it up with the reflector. And then I also have a setup where I use the diffuser because that is different. You will see the flicker kind of spread with the diffuser, obviously. And then using the reflector, just the reflector alone, it's going to be a bit more pronounced. Now, shooting at 24 frames per second, the light, let me just spoil it for you just for a second here. Like, stick around if you want, but anything under 20% on this light, and I tested it at 10%, once you crank your shutter speed up to beyond like 1/125 on a 24 frames per second. And yes, I understand the 180 rule. I get it. That's how I film professionally. But there are those of you that want to experiment, play around with things. And if you might be looking for a light, something if you're doing like food, like film for food, photography, whatever, and you want to set it up that way and you want to work some weird things with your shutter speed, by all means, go play around with your shutter speed. Go do you. But at 125 to 160 at 24 frames at 10% on the light, you are going to notice that flicker. You're going to start seeing that flickering happening. And so I even was using it. I saw it on the LCD of the camera, and then I even attached an external monitor to it so I could start seeing the flickering. Now, once you get 1/250 and then 1/500, yes, you will notice the flicker. It is bad. It really is, like, it's noticeable. If YouTube does some kind of weird compression and you can't see it, I'm telling you, I saw it. It's here. All of the pieces are here. So keep in mind, if you're shooting at 24 frames, if you're shooting at 30 frames, now here's the interesting thing. I had the white balance at daylight. So I wanted to try to remove as many variables as I could. And I wanted to try to adjust that aperture. And I have to say, like when I was at 1.4, I did notice that, yes, there's a lot more flicker. But then once that aperture got to about 2 to 2.5, really, like it starts disappearing. But again, I'm going to do another video on this a little bit more detailed. You may actually see it, but it may be something that you can get away with if you're doing like YouTube videos. And so it may not be that concerning at 10%. Honestly, folks, what I'm telling you is that you should just crank it up to no less than 20%. Now, I put the diffuser on it and I was doing some kind of like headshot stuff. And really what I came out with is not really mixed results. Like I was seeing very similar outcome here. So shooting at 24 frames and 1/50, not really any issues there at 10%, not really seeing any of the flickering. But once I hit 1/125 and maybe 1/160, yes, starting to just barely see some of it. And again, you might not see it on this video, but it was there. And then once you go 1/250 and then even 1/500, yes, it is there. It's just diffused. So it's not as concentrated. And I couldn't necessarily see it on my face, but I could definitely see it around in these areas. So you just kind of have to zoom in on it. And like I said, flicker test, it's there. Do not use this light for anything like the power, like less than 20% if you're shooting at a higher shutter speed. If you want your shutter speed to be any more than 1/50 and you're shooting at 24 or 30 frames per second, and really just, I would say, even 60 or 120, just keep it above 20%, 20 and above. All right, so if you stuck around this long and you want to know about the Aputure Light Dome second iteration, this is the full-on biggie. I mean, it is, whoa. This is not the mini. This is the full-on diffuser here. This is a 35-inch hexadecagon. Why don't you try saying that 10 times fast and see what you come up with? And I have to say that I am already in love with this diffuser, but some of you might be asking questions like, well, you got this like budget lamp, why not get something that is at a price point in relation to that budget lamp, because you can get diffusers that are less than $100 or around $100, because this is coming in at around $219, give or take, depending on where you get it. But I think you get so much more with this, and that's what I want to talk about. So this is a 35-inch hexadecagon shape Bowens mount, and it is also 24 inches in depth, and it does take up some space. So if you have a small studio, you might want to go with the mini. Now, it does actually have 16 steel rods that I will talk about. They are fixed, and I do want to talk about those. However, I want to talk about a couple of features that other diffusers are not necessarily coming with, at least that I have found in my research. If you do, you let me know in the comments. Now, one of the cool features is that it has a removable diffuser that is Velcroed in. I actually love it. It's in right now. I love the fact that you can get that a little bit of extra diffusion if you're looking for that. I will say though, be careful with it. I think it'll hold up, but just don't like pull and tear away, because you could tear the diffuser itself, and I'm not exactly sure like how well that inner diffuser will hold up, but it seems fine, and the stitching does actually seem fine. Now the outer diffusers, there is 2 of them. And again, here's the thing, folks, like this is some of the value that you're already getting. You've got an inner diffuser, and then you've got 2 diffusers. There is one that is about 1.5 stops, and then the other more thicker, we're talking about 2.5 stops, give or take 2.5 to 2 2/3 roughly. And so you have your pick there. Now, something additional as far as the price point is that it also comes with a grid. So you've got that inner diffuser, the 2 other diffusers, 1.5 stops, 2.5 stops, and the grid if you want to shape light. I am using the grid right now. I love that. You don't have to purchase that separately. That actually comes with this light dome. So I'm going to be experimenting with that a little bit, and I do think that that just kind of offers value to the price point when you're looking at around $200. So if you're looking for a grid and most of those diffusers don't come with one, this one does. Now, another piece of value that I want to talk about is this gel holder. So obviously removing all of the diffusion, getting in there, and it's kind of like, I don't know, that's like spring loaded or whatever, but it just fits in right over the light, and it's magnetic, folks. It's like when you've got the gels and you're trying to tape them up, or you're putting them on the lamps and the lamps are like melting them, or it's not how you want it, this is fantastic. Mounts right in there, and then it just has that magnet that just snaps right on, holds your gel in place, and I'm gonna really appreciate this. I am enjoying experimenting with the color, so I can't wait to actually do a little bit more of that with my professional shoots. Now, time is money, people, and I know this video is long, but let's talk about the teardown, the setup, the teardown. The 16 steel rods in this thing are attached to the mount itself, so they do not come off. But here's the thing, the setup is easy. Everything is fixed. So essentially what you're doing, like when you are putting this thing together, and like even the first time when I was actually setting this thing up, I have to say, I couldn't believe the ease of just snapping those rods into place. It just clicks into place. And when you need to tear it down, what I need to remind you of is lift up on the rod before hitting that little switch, that little button. So it's best to just lift up a little bit, hit the switch, and it'll drop down. So the teardown and the setup are like, it's a time saver, because when you're on set, like when you're on a shoot and you want to get things set up, you're not having to fumble with like rods that are actually detached from the mount itself. Love that. The overall material of the Aputure Light Dome does seem to be pretty quality, and I love the fact that it has its own case, and it's actually a pretty durable case so far. I think the zipper feels good and the handles feel good. It obviously fits the light dome when it's collapsed, and like it fits this piece in here. And then we actually have like a bag for the diffusers and another bag for the grid. And I can even throw my gels, like roll the gels up in there, and I can hit the I'm not gonna hit the town. I'm just gonna take it to a shoot. And so I just love the fact that I can be as portable as possible, and the setup being almost effortless. So when you're looking for a light dome, think about that based on the type of filming that you're doing. Do you need to be setting up and tearing down all the time? I would recommend this light dome based on just saving yourself some time and getting a good quality product, honestly, because I do feel like when you look at a price point, so when you look at the Godox SL-60W compared to something like a 120D, Is the 120D better? I mean, obviously I think that's subjective, but it also doesn't have the flicker issues as far as I know. But when you look at the price point of anywhere from $600 to $700 and more, compared to about $130, you can get multiple of the SL-60Ws compared to one 120D. But when you're comparing a $200 diffuser to around $100 diffuser, getting the diffusers, the inner diffuser, the gel holder, the grid, a nice case, honestly, I think that's kind of not a wash necessarily, but I think that you're finding the value. So when you're doubling a price going from $100 to $200, I think that's a bit more reasonable than saying, okay, I got to go from $130 to all the way up to $700, $750, or whatever the cost is in your country. So I think we've actually exhausted quite a bit here, but I do want to do more flicker testing. So like I said, I may come out with a separate video on that with more of that testing. I really appreciate you hanging out with me on this one. Feel free to leave questions and comments below. I love the community here. I love getting back to you, and I love just kind of building that rapport and helping you do your creative. And so let's get out on here on this one. Let's go out there and do things that matter. I want you to keep rocking faces. I appreciate you tuning in. I really appreciate each and every one of you. You just don't know how much I do from the bottom of my heart. There's a storm coming. The thunder's out there, but really the thunder is in here. It is really in here. So let's get out, go do it, rock faces, catch you on the next one. Thanks so much, and we're out. Hexadecagon. No, this hexadecagon. Try to say that 10 times fast and see what you come up with. It gets a little crazy.